is double check this sucker. Streaming live. Okay, cool. We are live. Bear with me. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, we're all good.
Cool, brother. Thank you so much for joining with me today. As a quick way to get started, why don't you give us all a 60-second synopsis on your background and what led you to where you're at in your career today?
Yeah, sure. So I am 19 years old. I work in the tech nonprofit sector. Currently acting as the head of relations to Astra Labs. Basically, in short, we develop technology for communities in need. So we made apps for the mental health community, for the LGBTQ plus safety community. Of course, with COVID and Black Lives Matter going on right now, we're developing solutions for that. But as for my background, I've been involved in application development and web development for the past 5 to 6 years, I'd say. Grew up in Aspen, Colorado, met some amazing people out there. Shout out to Dave Mayer, he's had my back this whole way, Strippy Mesro. Just really been growing for the past 3 years, and we're lucky to see where the future leads us.
And where is the future going to lead you, do you think? What is the vision there?
That's a good question. So Astra recently launched our COVID-19 relief project. And this was really huge for us because most of our applications usually take roughly 6 to 8 months to develop. And it's great because you have that time to talk with people and really learn from what they're looking for in these solutions. But of course, COVID slapped us all in the back of the head, and Astra was sitting there like, right, we've got the resources to create something, but how do we really help those in need? And so what we're able to do is sit down with about 24 doctors over the period of a 3-day time span and really ask them, how can we help? Sit there, listen, take notes, and then strategize after that. And what we heard from them was that their mental health services were out of whack. They had no counseling in the hospitals. They were expected to be working 18-hour shifts. And so they were looking for an online platform to fill this gap in mental health counseling. And so with that in mind, we sat down with people that we knew and sort of just like a real Mod Podge and just threw this website together in a 2-week time frame, which is way out of our box from the 6 to 8 months that it usually is. Threw the website together, and 3 days later, we had 100,000 hits. And so it really talks to when you develop technology based on what the consumer and what the patient needs, how the reaction on that other end really pays off.
So what was it that helped you, enabled you to develop that quickly? And is that going to be the test for any product development you do moving forward?
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, you can't ignore our team. Our team is amazing. We've got a core team of 6 members, another 3 or 4 additional volunteers. They're made up of marketers, iOS developers, Android developers. We have some people helping out with finances. Everybody gets their hands in everything. As for the increase in development time, I can't shorthand the developers. I mean, you're talking about Amanda Southworth and Ben Henderson, and Karan Pandya, and some amazing teenage iOS developers who are able to sit down, see the solution, and create a product in under a week, and then take the next week to redevelop it and go through iterations to the point where you have a final product ready for mass market, ready for 100,000 users in less than 3 or 4 days. It's hard to build a framework that has the security to handle that high load in such a time frame. But I think the COVID response was a real testament to both these developers' abilities, but also the ability to Astra structure and how we can rapidly roll out these response plans.
What was it that resonated so well? I mean, such a monster amount of traffic through to that in a short period of time after launching an entirely new concept. Yeah. What helped build the success there?
Sure. I'll say a few things. Number one, you really have to talk to the people you're designing these products for. At Astra, we have roughly 8 core ethics that we develop upon every day. One of those is build with the communities we serve, not for them. And what that comes down to in the patient, a lot of things is products designed by patients for patients. And so when you're developing iOS applications or websites, you really need to consider why people aren't using the already traditional and saturated market that is already available to them. And with us, with most markets that we analyze, it's because these applications are designed without the patient in mind. They're theory-based, right? It's what you read in the textbook. They need CBT, they need DB2D tools. That's not really always necessarily true. And so with the COVID-19 response plan, what we did is we took precisely what the patient, or in this case, the healthcare providers were asking for, laid it out in a system, signed off on more than 24 partnerships that would make it happen, and then gave it on an iOS platform, emailed all the people that we've been talking to back and like, hey, this is what you told us about. Here it is. If you have any colleagues who are having the same problem, forward it to them, and then tell them to forward it to the next person. As it turns out, of the 36 people that we talked to that are having these problems with mental illness and mental health in hospital, they weren't alone. There was 100,000 plus others across the nation who are having these same struggles on a daily basis who wanted the resources. So if you're willing to listen and you're willing to be reflective of what the consumer is needing in the moment in the market, then I find this whole quote unquote spread like wildfire theory isn't a theory anymore. It's not where you post it, it's not how you market it, it's not what your operating budget is. It's who your consumers are and how much they care about the product that you're building for them.
And then you also did some interesting stuff with influencers too. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, totally. Obviously, with every new project that we launch, we reach out to influencers and we set a marketing budget on it, and the same thing that you'd find in any technology or 21st century company, I should hope. What we had a lot of success with was we brought on board Dr. Dave, I don't know his last name. You will remember him as the man who was sitting in a diner and Mike Pence walked in for like a press photo op, and he pulled Mike Pence aside and was like, hey, I heard you're cutting apart my healthcare services, my healthcare programs. What's up with this? Why are you cutting the budget? Anyway, he pulled him aside in a diner, asked Mike Pence all these questions. It went viral. Since then, he's got a huge following within the MedTech community, medical technology community. And so I blindly DM'd him. I knew about him. I was like, hey, we're launching this. We've talked to a lot of doctors. Here's the product. Here's the solution. Would you care to support? 2-3 days went by, nothing back. I mean, this is a man with millions of Twitter followers. Nothing's hard done by here. I wasn't expecting a reply. But then sure enough, 3 days later, he replies, he's like, this is fucking amazing. And he reached out to his community, blasted it, DM'd some people, and then the wildfire begins. Because it's not an advertising marketing project, it's an organically developed an outreach. It's an organically developing outreach project, if that makes sense. And beyond all of that, it adds credibility, right? If you've got people in the field who are both vetting and suggesting this product for others alike them, it's like, hey, I'm having this problem. I know you might be too. It works brilliantly for me. Give it a try. Then it's like sitting down in a focus group or going to an AA meeting. You're all there with the same problem. Just one of you's found a new solution that might help the second person.
Yeah, I think that's important. A lot of people build for what they think the market needs and without actually going and talking to the market in the way that you guys did, and kind of bootstrapping along in the beginning until it caught wind, caught fire. It's like a mini forest fire that just kind of picked up spark by spark. And now where's the company at now with everything?
Sure. Well, we've learned a few things from this. And the first is how we talk to our consumers, the people and the communities that we're building for. And so what we found in the COVID response plan was that obviously you have the very traditional focus group study where you'll sit down, there'll be a scripted list of questions and everybody gives their opinion, right? And sometimes you pay them 10, 20 bucks. People come in, take the 20 bucks, answer a few questions, walk out. That works great. You get all your answers. But what we did with the COVID-19 response plan is we stripped the focus group study apart for all its bare bones. And so instead of scripting the conversation, instead of scripting the narrative, we opened with a very almost bland question. And this is something that we're looking to replicate in most of our research studies when we're developing new applications. And that question is, how can I help? And it leaves it very open to the consumer, right? Because they're not quite sure which part you can even help in. So you got to give them some bare bones things. You got to tell them, well, we're iOS developers. We develop for communities in need. We realize that you are in a very stressed situation, as for the healthcare workers, and then you leave it there. And so they could have come back to us and said, we need food and we need supplies. Can you make that into an app? And it's like, well, no, but there are these guys in New York, trying to think of their names, Founders Give, great organization. Like, well, no, his Founders Give though, and they're doing this. And obviously with us having the connections in the tech world, link two dots together and make it work. As for the future of Astra Labs, we are sort of in a redevelopment phase, to be honest with you. We recently brought on a significant amount of funding, which hasn't been publicized yet, but so I won't disclose that, but it will be publicized in the coming week, which will sustain our operations hopefully through the end of the decade. With that in mind, we're going through a small amount of inside restructuring. We're looking to make our internal communications flow more efficient, and then in turn, replicating what happened on the COVID-19 plan and taking these 6 to 8 months development time for applications and iOS projects and websites down to less than a month, as we saw in the COVID-19 release plan.
You said funding for the decade.
For the decade, yes.
Decade, 10 years?
10 years.
You got enough funding for 10 years.
10 years of sustained operations at our current workflow.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's a big moment for us. And to give some insight onto the growth that means for Astra Labs, obviously I won't disclose the final number that we raised, but we had previously been operating on a $30,000 operating budget. And so if you can just visualize the transition from that to a 10-decade operating budget, it's substantial.
Definitely. That's phenomenal.
Well,
and something unique to the success of that I think Bear is important to touch on is the way you've built this differently. And there's a lot of companies that are in med tech in that sector or sell medical related products, services, you name it. Something that caught my attention that we had talked about is what you had called patients and not profits.
Yeah.
And obviously businesses, even nonprofits, need to run as a business and need profits. We live in an economic planet. You need funds. You got funding. That's going to allow you to continue to operate. So what do you mean by that? How do you think that applies to others who want to follow in your footsteps?
Sure. Well, the word patient itself is a very sensitive word, especially in the medtech world. When you're talking about a patient, you're talking about their data, about their lifestyle. Beyond all else, if you really want to track it down, you're talking about their humanity. And so when you're monetizing the patient, you're monetizing our own community. And that brings up a lot of problems. Number one, for us, within our ethics, we have vowed to always make all of our applications free. So that's step one. We can all agree on that, bare bones. Step two for us is there'll never be any advertisements in any of our applications. The reason for this is that when developing for communities in need, we don't believe that those communities in need should ever be able to be targeted, right? The name of our COVID-19 website, quite ironically, was Isolated, Not Alone. With that in mind, we never believed that a patient or a community or a person should be able to be isolated or targeted within the digital realm. Number two. Number three comes down to the most hot topic issue of all these days, and that's data. Obviously, when people come onto our systems, and whether they're using our mental health support application or our LGBTQ plus safety application, even as doctors sign into the COVID-19 response plan to get mental health counseling, we have a shit ton of data, right? It's data on the mindset of these people, what support plans they need, what sexuality they are, what gender they are, all kinds of minute little things, where they are. And that is extremely easy to monetize, and people do monetize it, and we just don't believe in that. Both as a non-profit and a non-profit in business of supporting those who are either in emergency situations or in dire need of support, we'd feel like we'd be stabbing our mission in the back to do anything with it, with any of the data or the products that come of our developments. Now, of course, the question comes, how do you make money, right? Well, version 1 is you find a very wealthy donor who will put up some cash, and you just work off of that for the next 5 years. That's great. What you lose with that is the engagement with the community that creates a following behind a nonprofit. And so you look at like the ASPCA or Black Lives Matter, all of these non-profit or public movements are grounded in the people who follow and support them and donate to them. It's the Bernie Sanders model, right? I can have 5 people put up 20 grand, or I can just rely off of your $5 and my $1 and Joe's $10. And so what you lose when you go in for the bid donors are the true people. As for the Astra Labs side of things, as of right now, we're fine with that. Because as we develop for these communities in need, we don't want the support of the public based off of their $5 or the $1 donation. We want the support of the public based off of their engagement and their belief in the product that we create for them, right? It's changed the mindset away from monetization, depicting support and following and credibility of a brand, to actual users and actual daily use of a product or iOS application that then defines how credible your organization is. And I mean, trust me, we could put out an ASPCA style video that depicts mental health, and it will really, crush some people's hearts, and then we'll get a few $5 and $1 donations from all over the nation. And that's brilliant, but we don't really solve any problem with that. We develop the operating cash to solve more problems, but we don't actually touch the lives of any people. And so it's just cutting out the middleman and the middle steps for us.
Yeah, I think it brings a unique set of challenges, but also a unique opportunity for growing a platform like that.
It definitely does. On the note, of course, everybody knows about the Bernie Sanders campaign model. On the note of that, when we're looking at small donors, it's fine if you have less than 1,000 small donors. Once you grow beyond that, and if you start to look at the trends of where your small donors come from, they could be primarily using your mental health application, or primarily being doctors using your COVID-19 relief application. At which point you have a tied duty, a financial duty, to put their money towards the application or solution that they most need, right? If you give me $5 and you need mental health support, I'm going to feel obligated to just use your $5 for more mental health support, rather than Astra Labs being able to broaden our horizons to Black Lives Matter or augmented reality or any other horizon that so sees fit.
Was there already a underlying major challenge for healthcare workers in their mental health, or did COVID really bring out a lot of the mental challenges, and net it was still just kind of average compared to any other professional out there?
Yeah. Well, healthcare providers are already let's put it this way, they are already at the highest risk of mental health issues. We'll just classify it as quote unquote issues for now. In the grand scheme of things, pre-COVID-19, it was all under control. They work at hospitals. Hospitals have mental health wings. Say in hospital, whatever, New York's hospital, 5 to 10 a month out of the 5 to 10,000 that work there would go seek help. That's fine. What was interesting that happened with COVID is, of course, you still have these 5 to 10 a month going to seek help, mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Then let's just say you're doubling or tripling that, because people are stressed and they're watching people die at an ungodly rate. And so now you've got 30 people seeking mental health. That's fine. The system can still control that. The problem and the failure of which we witnessed, and the solution that we developed was that a lot of the mental health wings within the hospitals got shut down because they were non-essential. And so suddenly, although the system primarily and ordinarily would be able to handle 30 people per hospital or even 300 people per hospital, The resources and support were no longer there. With that in mind, as we were doing our research and having our conversations, I talked with a health consultant at one of London's hospitals, and she was telling me about a really interesting theory and development that they'd made. And they'd created these things called whittle rooms. And so what it looked like in practicality was usually as you come out of surgery, you take your gowns out, you wash off, and then you go straight back out into the real world, right? Which doesn't leave much time to decompress and talk about the experiences that you've just had alongside other people who have been through the same experiences. And so what they did is they looked at a research study that the British Army had done roughly a decade ago. And they looked at both the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force all coming home. And then they looked at who had the most PTSD, right? Turns out the Air Force had the most PTSD and the Army had the least. The reason for this is because when the Air Force was done in battle, they would jump on a plane and be home, whatever it was, 8 hours later. And they were straight back in reality, and they didn't have time to decompress and talk amongst others who had also been up in the air doing whatever acts, right? On the other side of things, the Army and the Navy had weeks or days or months to come home as their ship went across the Atlantic. And so they talked about these things, and they were with these people who had both emotionally been through the same trauma with them. Coming back to the hospital side of things, whittle rooms were implemented as a step between surgery and the outdoor world, as a space where people could sit down, have a cup of tea, drink, talk, and just decompress for even just 5 minutes. And what they saw in the hospitals was that the rates of people seeking mental health care, and I forget the name of the hospital, but it went from roughly 45% daily of all physicians on duty down to just 12% in the 3 days after the whittle rooms were implemented. Now, if you flip that to the technological side of things, it's synonymous. We're developing technology just to be that middle area. Obviously, it's already a saturated market of solutions with people who are either suicidal or on the brink of being suicidal. You're seeking help immediately, and we can't fill that gap because we don't have the resources to. What we do is to be the middleman. So that's where it leaves us.
Love it. And how many users do you guys have now?
So we've got 2 applications on the market, and then the COVID-19 response plan right now. The first application is called Anxiety Helper. That's our mental health. That has roughly 120,000 users, most of which use it on a daily basis, or at least once a week. The second is Verena. That's our LGBTQ plus safety application. That's roughly 30,000, give or take, on a daily basis.
Wow.
And then COVID-19 response plan, I haven't checked in a week, but roughly 150,000 since launch, which was almost a month ago today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's phenomenal. Well, thank you for doing what you're doing. It's so important. Mental health is a precursor to everything else in life for the most part. It's attached to everything. And I think it's definitely great that people are out there talking about it, investing in it, investing into ethical tech, like you and I had talked about. And there's a huge, broad, big horizon on the other side of this COVID era we're on, where people can follow in your footsteps and know how to build something like that, which is great. Anything else you want to touch on or hit before we wrap up here?
No, that sounds amazing to me. I would just say for anybody who's watching that, please feel free to email me. The whole team's emails are just my first name, bear@withastra.org, or Amanda@withastra.org. Reach out. We're an open source platform. We're here to have the right conversations and develop these really instrumental products that people need. So if you feel like you can support, or you feel like we can support you, reach out and we'll have the chat.
And where can people find the platforms at? What websites do they need to go to?
So all of our handles are @withastra. And then as for the website, it is withastra.org.
With Astra. Cool. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I appreciate making the time. Have a safe trip back here to the States. All of you listening, make sure, again, go subscribe, leave a review.